Because it turns out that if you look at the D&M, these latitude lines, as they cross, make angles with the interior geometry, and look what we have here, 19.5 degrees and 19.5 degrees, which is confirmation that we have successfully solved the puzzle and decoded the message of Cydonia. And of course, this all relates to the angles that we have encoded in color, and to the fact that E prime, or the tetrahedral ratio E, is really square root of 3 divided by 2, which is a fundamental constant. Anyway, so it appears as if we have successfully worked through the puzzle that somebody laid out, and the message of the puzzle is, look to your tetrahedra. Now, what in the world is that supposed to tell us? Okay? Plato notwithstanding. Well, let's look a little further here. You'll notice here that we have a clear, enhanced version of Cydonia. Notice how much better it is than the NASA version. This is a lot of after-hours programming and computer time applied by people outside the space agency, I would like to remind you. Here's the face, here's the city, just the eastern end of it. Here's the D&M down here. Here's this little round thing we call the tholus. Here's the cliff. Here's this little thing here. What I'm showing here is that the same angles and the same geometry and the same constants, the same relationships, and yes, the same message that we decoded in the D&M has been repeated over and over redundantly throughout the entire complex. Why 19.5? Well, as I looked at the solar system, in my background, I was at the Hayden Planetarium. I've been a NASA consultant, as Mohammed said. I've been involved in planetary science and astronomy most of my adult professional life. My familiarity with the space program is through the planetary program. I have experienced this extraordinary vicarious thrill through the Voyager missions, as we have literally gone where no one has gone before and seen it on live television. So the first thing I realized when the importance of this latitude became quite apparent was, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. And the pattern is that on every major or minor planet that we have flown by, looked at, or mapped in the last 30 years through NASA imagery, the major disturbance, starting with Jupiter and the Great Red Spot, lies just about at 19.5 north or south. What we think it's trying to tell us is the fact that the internal upwellings of energy on planets, starting with what we term the gas giants in the outer solar system, such as Jupiter, are exemplified by what we will now term circumscribed tetrahedral mathematics. This is time-lapse photography taken during the Voyager mission by Voyagers 1 and 2, an exquisite computer process of fitting together individual frames so you get an actual movie. Notice this enormous vortex, that's what it is, rotating, frozen on the central meridian by the time-lapse cameras and the computer algorithms. We'll get some other close-ups here in a moment. What this is a huge upwelling of internal heat swirling around because of the differential rotation of cloud bands to the north and the south of it. And it sits there for year after year after year after year, rotating every 12 days. Jupiter is so massive, it's 318 times the mass of the Earth. It is fully 10 times the size of the Earth, that this huge atmospheric vortex, which is high up in the Jovian stratosphere and extends to an unknown depth below the visible cloud layers, this vortex is big enough to swallow the entire planet Earth. It has been termed a hurricane, a storm. It is our strong suspicion now that it is not any kind of hurricane or storm that we, the human race, are familiar with. That in fact it is being impelled by a physics that is exemplified by this circumscribed tetrahedral geometry, and the reason it lives at this particular longitude on Jupiter is because that's where the geometry, in terms of the rotation of the planet, wants it to live, mandates that it live. All right? Now, this is the Earth. What happens if I put a circumscribed tetrahedron in the planet known as Earth? Well, over here, you will see that it's right in the middle of India. And over here, you see that it marks the Hawaii volcano at exactly 19.5 north And the Hawaiian volcano, screen on, is an exemplification of a huge upwelling of material that's coming up from the outer core of the Earth, and that upwelling has been persisting for at least 65 million years, judging by the enormous lava flows and effusive material that wells out in the center of the Pacific. Isn't it ironic that we can trace the history of this structure back 65 million years to a plume of material, energy coming up from the center of the Earth, radially out at 19.5 north? Except on these planets, such as Mars, instead of, which is very like the Earth as a solid surface, instead of having a vortex, what you've got is a volcano, because the energy which is in the core comes up as a plume of rising hot lava, erupts on the surface, spreads out, forms a big pile of cold rock after a while. Without plate tectonics on Mars, this lava pile has grown to a height of over 25 kilometers above the mean and is over 300 miles across. A huge, huge shield volcano, the greatest shield volcano in the solar system. Now this pattern is pretty interesting because the pattern is implying very strongly that we are looking at a physics under the pattern. Incidentally, if you go one tetrahedron vertex over, remember each vertex is 120 degrees of longitude around the planet, you will come to the longitude of Cydonia. You go north 40.87, and there is the face and pyramid of Mars. So the very psyche of the complex appears part of the mathematical message designed to underscore the crucial importance of this geometric pattern to something having to do with fundamental planetary physics and the energy dynamics driving things. Now, are we proposing that there are real tetrahedra buried in planets? No, we're not doing that, no. However, in many examples of physics, you will find mathematical and geometric models of forces that are being modeled geometrically. There is, for instance, an article in Scientific American for the issue following this one that I happened to pick up down at the UN newsstand yesterday afternoon while I was waiting for them to set all this stuff up. And there on the whole, there is a cosmological article based on a topological geometric modeling of the early days of the universe as a reason for why the galaxies are formed where they are and why they have the geometry in terms of each other that they do. So the idea of geometric models as indicators of underlying forces in nature is nothing new. What's new about this is the geometry of this pattern and the fact that something about this pattern is indicating that energy preferentially wants to come up from planetary interiors at 19.5 north and south. Well, this is what you see when you look at these two tetrahedra inside each other. What does it all mean?